Welcome to another deep dive. We are just really thrilled to have you here today.
Absolutely. It's a great topic we have lined up.
Yeah, and if you're joining us today, you are likely, that person in your friend group who is fiercely curious about the world, but you also deeply value your time.
Right. You want the signal, not the noise.
Exactly, the signal.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to take a truly provocative piece of writing, really break it down, and figure out what it actually means for your everyday life.
And the excerpt we're opening up today it's heavily debated, but really fascinating.
It is. Specifically, we are diving into Chapter 1, The Illusion of the Road.
It's just a profound piece of writing, and it targets this very specific modern condition that, well, I think everyone listening will recognize it instantly.
I want to start by tapping into that exact feeling, actually. It's a sensation you probably experience almost every single day.
Just looking at the news, right?
Right, just look around you right now.
Yeah.
It honestly feels like everything is breaking at the exact same time. You read the news, and the oceans are warming to these record temperatures. You scroll through your feed, and entire regions are battling unprecedented wildfires.
And then you go to the store.
And the cost of a carton of eggs or a loaf of bread, just basic, everyday survival, it's rising significantly faster than your paycheck.
Yeah.
And layered on top of all of that, people just seem more stressed, more anxious, and honestly more medicated than at any prior point in human history.
Right.
The sheer volume of crises it's overwhelming.
It is entirely overwhelming. And the thing is, it's overwhelming by design.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how our society has sort of trained you to respond to that cascade of information.
How so?
Well, when you turn on the evening news or, read a mainstream publication, you're presented with these issues as completely separate, isolated events.
Like they live in different buckets.
Exactly. You have a climate problem over in one column, you have a macroeconomic inflation problem in another, and then a sociological mental health crisis somewhere else entirely.
Yeah.
And because we categorize them as distinct, unrelated failures, we're told we need separate experts and highly specialized, isolated solutions.
So we do exactly what the culture instructs us to do, right? We compartmentalize our anxiety.
We do.
You vote for a new politician, hoping they pull the right macroeconomic lever to fix the inflation.
Yeah.
Or you buy an electric car or install solar panels to address your portion of the climate crisis.
Or you download a mindfulness app.
Right. You block out 10 minutes for meditation to deal with the baseline anxiety of modern life. We are constantly searching for all these individual, highly specific bandages.
But the text we're exploring today presents a radical unifying thesis that completely cuts through all of that compartmentalization.
It asks a profound structural question.
It really does. It asks, what if these aren't separate crises at all?
Right.
What if the burning forests, the skyrocketing grocery bills, and the unprecedented levels of personal anxiety are actually symptoms of the exact same mechanical failure?
Okay, let's unpack this, because the text uses a really striking analogy to illustrate this mechanical failure. And I want to paint this picture for you.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah. Imagine you are a passenger on a bus, and this bus is accelerating rapidly toward a steep cliff.
Obviously, panic sets in.
Totally. All the passengers around you are screaming. They're fighting with each other. They're arguing fiercely over who gets to sit in the driver's seat. They're yelling about what radio station should be playing. They're debating intensely whether the driver should turn the wheel to the left or to the right to avoid the drop. The urgency in that bus is palpable.
It feels like every single one of those arguments matters more than anything in the world.
Exactly.
Because in the minds of the passengers, whoever controls that steering wheel controls their ultimate fate.
Right.
It is a completely rational human reaction to a perceived system of control during a crisis.
Here's where it gets really interesting. What nobody on that bus notices, what the text points out as the grand punchline of our modern society, is that the steering wheel isn't actually connected to the tires.
Right. It's totally disconnected.
It reminds me of being a kid and handing your younger sibling an unplugged video game controller.
Yes.
They're mashing the buttons, they're leaning into the turns, completely convinced they're driving the car on the screen, while you are the one actually playing the game.
That is a perfect parallel. The steering wheel is completely disconnected.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, think about what that means for you, sitting on that bus, participating in those debates.
It changes everything.
It means it absolutely does not matter who is sitting in the driver's seat. It doesn't matter how hard they yank that wheel to the left or how aggressively they pull it to the right.
The bus is going over the cliff, regardless.
Regardless. And it's going over the cliff because the problem isn't the driver. The problem is the engine.
The problem is the engine. We spend all of our energy, all of our time, and all of our emotional bandwidth fighting over the driver.
Fighting over a prop.
Right, we yell at the other passengers, we argue about the steering wheel, but if the steering wheel is entirely disconnected, why hasn't anyone noticed?
That's the big question.
If the vehicle is hurtling toward a cliff, why are we all so easily fooled by a plastic prop?
Well, the source material brings in some heavy analytical frameworks to explain exactly why we're staring at a disconnected wheel without realizing it.
And it references the work of the late political theorist Sheldon Wolin here, right?
Yes, Wolin. He spent a massive portion of his career studying the specific phenomenon of systemic misdirection, and he coined a term for it, inverted totalitarianism.
Let's dive into inverted totalitarianism because Wolin's framing is brilliant.
It really is.
If you think about classical totalitarianism, the fascist dictatorships or the Soviet blocs of the 20th century.
Where control was maintained by violently silencing the public.
Exactly. You were not allowed to speak, you were not allowed to debate, and questioning the state was strictly off limits.
Right.
But Wolin argued that our modern system is inverted. Instead of shutting down debate, the system actually demands it.
It weaponizes free speech.
Yes, it encourages you to passionately, furiously debate politics, culture, and identity. You are given unlimited platforms to fight endlessly over that disconnected steering wheel.
Because the sheer volume of the noise is the mechanism of control.
Wow.
The constant fighting over the steering wheel acts as the perfect pressure release valve.
So while you're completely consumed by the daily culture wars,
The trending outrage on social media, the political theater on the surface.
the real machinery underneath the engine remains completely untouchable.
Untouchable. It runs itself quietly in the background, entirely shielded from public scrutiny because everyone is too busy yelling at each other on the bus to look under the hood.
I want to pause here and make something explicitly clear to you, the listener.
Hmm.
Because Wolin's work and this text heavily emphasize this point.
Very important point to make.
We are doing a mechanical diagnosis of the world today.
Right.
This text makes it incredibly clear that this is not a partisan political argument.
Right.
We are not taking a left-wing stance or a right-wing stance, nor are we endorsing a specific political ideology. The source material explicitly states that there is no left or right answer here because both sides of the aisle are just fighting over the same disconnected wheel.
Exactly.
We are simply examining the engine block.
And it is vital to keep that objective mechanical lens in place. Building on that structural misdirection, the text takes this a step further.
By bringing in Miranda Fricker, right?
Yes, the philosopher Miranda Fricker. She has this concept known as hermeneutical injustice.
Hermeneutical injustice.
Right. It occurs when a population is deliberately kept from having the vocabulary, the shared concepts, and the linguistic tools they need to understand and articulate their own reality.
Fricker's concept plays perfectly into this illusion. If you don't have the words to describe what's happening to you, you can't articulate your suffering.
And you certainly can't organize with others to stop it.
It's like having a chronic, debilitating physical pain, but the medical establishment has entirely erased the biological term for your disease.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
When you try to explain your symptoms, people just think you are making it up or suffering from a personal failing.
And the text argues that this is exactly what has happened with our society's engine.
So the takeaway here isn't that you are missing the engine because you aren't paying attention.
Right. It's not a failure of your intellect.
It is that the system has structurally evolved to make the engine almost impossible to describe in polite society.
As the text brilliantly distills it, you cannot question what you cannot describe.
Which naturally leads to the mechanics of how a system accomplishes that. How does it successfully hide the most important machinery of our society right in plain sight?
To answer that, the source text turns to the mechanics of mass communication.
Right, specifically referencing the landmark media analysis of Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman.
Chomsky and Herman? Yes. They are renowned for mapping out how corporate media manufactures the narrative.
And their framework fits the illusion of the road perfectly.
It does. What is crucial about Chomsky and Herman's analysis is the realization that corporate media doesn't need to lie to you outright to control the narrative.
Because outright fabrication is actually a very brittle form of control.
Exactly. If you get caught in a direct lie, the illusion shatters. Instead, the media acts as a sophisticated gatekeeper.
Right.
It establishes incredibly strict boundaries around what is considered a reasonable or serious topic of debate.
Think about the 2008 financial crisis as a perfect historical example of this. When the global economy melted down, the media drew a highly specific, reasonable boundary box. Inside that box, you were allowed, even highly encouraged, to argue endlessly.
Should we bail out the banks or the homeowners?
Right. Did the regulators fall asleep at the wheel?
Which politician is to blame for the lack of oversight?
Exactly. All of those debates were permitted. But the media ensured that the fundamental structure of the engine itself, the very nature of how we create and distribute money, was kept safely outside those boundaries.
Safely hidden away.
If you question the foundational premise of the financial system, you were labeled an unserious radical and denied a microphone.
The Overton window, the spectrum of acceptable discourse, is meticulously curated. You can debate marginal tax rates, immigration policies, endless culture wars.
But the text points out the one vital piece of information that never makes it onto the evening news.
Never.
The one thing that never gets fiercely debated on the Sunday morning political talk shows is how money itself is created.
Right.
And what the mathematical reality of that creation is doing to every single living thing on this planet.
Oh, true.
So what does this all mean? We've talked about the decoy steering wheel, the media boundaries, and the lack of vocabulary. But it's time to actually open the hood.
Well, let's do it.
What is the fuel? How is money actually created in this system, and why is it the untouchable engine?
This is the core revelation of the text. And it requires us to look at the mechanics of fractional reserve banking and fiat currency.
Okay.
Most people operate under the assumption that money is a static resource, like gold in a vault, or that the government just prints it when they need it.
Right, like there's a big printing press somewhere just churning out bills.
But in our modern global system, nearly all money is created through debt.
Through debt.
When a commercial bank issues a loan, whether it is a mortgage for a house, a line of credit for a business, or a massive corporate buyout, they don't go down to a vault and hand over existing cash.
They simply type numbers into a computer screen.
Exactly. They conjure the principal amount of that loan out of thin air.
They create the money by creating the debt.
Yes.
But here is the massive mechanical catch that the text zeroes in on. When the bank creates that money for the principal of the loan, they do not create the money to pay the interest.
That's the catch.
If I borrow $100,000, the bank conjures that $100,000, but I owe them $110,000 back.
And that extra $10,000 literally does not exist yet in the money supply.
Which brings us to the single unchangeable rule of the engine.
Because the money to pay the interest on all the world's debt does not exist, the overall economy must constantly generate new loans, new debt, and new growth just to create the currency required to pay off the old debt.
Wow.
The rule is absolute. The engine must go faster every single year, forever, or it stalls and explodes.
I want that to sink in for you. It must go faster every single year, forever.
Forever.
The text emphasizes that this is not a poetic metaphor about human greed. It's not a philosophical critique of consumerism.
No, it's just math.
It is the literal, hard mathematical reality baked into the foundation of debt-based currency. Our financial system is inherently designed to require perpetual, compounding growth just to maintain equilibrium.
If the growth stops, the defaults cascade and the system collapses.
This mathematical rule, this embedded demand for infinite acceleration, is the unseen force dictating the pace of your life.
That's right. This is the math that forces you to run faster at your job every single year just to maintain the exact same standard of living you had a decade ago.
It is the reason it feels like you're sprinting on a treadmill that someone keeps dialing up.
Their grocery bills, your housing costs, your required productivity, they are all tied to an engine that mathematically cannot afford to slow down.
And this is where the genius of the text really shines. Because this is where all the disparate pieces we discussed at the very beginning finally snap together into a unified picture.
The compartmentalization we talked about.
Yes. To do this, the author synthesizes the research of systems theorist Nafeez Ahmed and ecological economist Herman Daly.
Brilliant thinkers.
Traditional economics views the environment as a minor subset of the economy, just a place we extract raw materials from. But Daly and Ahmed flip that.
They do. They prove that the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment.
Right.
And by applying systems theory, Ahmed and Daly rigorously map out how the environmental collapse, the financial instability, and the social breakdown are not separate crises.
They're not isolated events requiring different experts.
Row.
They are the exact same crisis. They're all driven by that singular, unchangeable rule of the engine, the demand for infinite compounding growth on a finite planet.
Think about the warming oceans and the burning forests. That is simply the engine demanding more physical fuel to meet this year's growth targets.
Consider the skyrocketing inflation and the boom and bust economic cycles. That is the engine aggressively manipulating the debt and money supply to keep the mathematical illusion of perpetual acceleration alive.
And think about the widespread anxiety, the burnout, and the stress that you and everyone you know are feeling.
That is the human toll. That is the biological cost of a species being forced to run faster every single year to feed a machine that, by its very mathematical design, can never be satisfied.
It's just one single mechanical crisis expressing itself in the environment, the economy, and the human mind simultaneously.
Recognizing this interconnectedness is a profound paradigm shift.
It really is. It moves you from feeling like a helpless victim of 100 random, chaotic disasters to recognizing the single underlying mechanism driving them all.
That is the true power of this text. And it's the reason we wanted to do this deep dive for you today. The ultimate promise of this first chapter is that once you see the engine, you cannot unsee it.
You really can't.
Once you understand that the steering wheel is totally disconnected, you stop screaming at the other passengers on the bus.
You stop wasting your precious energy and emotional bandwidth on the illusion of the road.
The value of that mental model, especially for you as a listener trying to navigate a fiercely noisy and complex world, cannot be overstated.
Oh, absolutely. We are subjected to information overload every single minute of the day.
Algorithms are designed to make you outraged by 1,000 different microscopic cultural grievances.
But this framework, the disconnected steering wheel and the hidden engine, it acts as an incredibly powerful filter. When you see two talking heads screaming at each other on television about some marginal policy tweak, you don't have to internalize that stress anymore.
You can look at them and calmly say, they're just fighting over the steering wheel.
Exactly. It frees your mind to focus on what actually matters.
It frees you from the trap of inverted totalitarianism. The text promises that over the subsequent chapters, it will explore exactly how this debt-based engine was historically constructed.
And more importantly, how alternative models have functioned in the past.
Because the ultimate hope embedded in this mechanical diagnosis is that once enough people stop looking at the decoy and start looking at the engine, we can finally stop arguing about the driver.
We can actually start talking about changing the machinery itself.
It is the necessary first step toward any meaningful structural change.
You have to map the exact nature of the cage before you can design the key.
Beautifully said. Which brings me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with today. Something to mull over on your commute or while you're making dinner tonight.
Let's hear it.
We have spent a lot of time today talking about the math of money and how debt-based currency structurally demands infinite accelerating growth.
Right.
But we live on a physical planet governed by the laws of thermodynamics. There is finite physical space. There's a finite amount of clean water, arable land, and raw materials.
Yes.
So what happens when the engine's mathematical demand for infinite compounding expansion finally collides with the absolute unbreakable physical limits of our planet?
What happens when we simply run out of physical space to expand into?
Could it be that the local, community-based bartering systems of our distant past systems built on mutual aid and balanced equilibrium rather than accelerating debt might actually hold a secret blueprint for building an entirely different kind of engine for the future?
Just something to think about.
It is an essential equation to ponder as we start looking past the illusion of the road and facing the reality of the engine.
Definitely.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us and for letting us share something so structurally revealing with you.
It's been great.
We hope this deep dive has equipped you with a powerful new lens through which to view the daily news cycle. Until next time, keep questioning the boundaries of the narrative, look past the steering wheel, and always stay curious. Bye for now.